Roswell, New Mexico. For many people, the name is synonymous with a crashed flying saucer and an unusual government cover-up. 6 decades after the mysterious event, eyewitnesses continue to stick to their stories.
I do think it was a craft of some kind. It was not of human manufacture. Where it came from, I don't know, but I do know it did not come from Earth.
What fell out of the sky that summer is still shrouded in mystery.
Whatever it was that they really found so unsettled them that there seems to have been a panic.
This much is clear. The quiet New Mexican town was changed forever when on July 8, 1947, word of a flying saucer crash hit the news. But in only 4 hours, the story was suddenly recanted. What shocked the public almost more than the initial announcement was it now was being denied by the same official sources who'd released it in the first place. Today, the Roswell incident lives on in the public imagination. But it began as America was coming of age in a frightening new era. It was the aftermath of World War II and a period of heightened fear of invasion. Powerful weapons could wipe away cities in a single devastating moment. 1947 was the year the CIA was formed. Americans everywhere feared Russian sympathizers and infiltrators.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
It was the beginning of the Cold War, and spying on the enemy became an essential tactic. Coincidentally, throughout the late 1940s, there were also many sightings of what came to be referred to as flying saucers.
It's falling! It's falling towards the Earth!
And so the stage was set for a small American town to become the touchstone for a UFO conspiracy. It was while working on a farm outside Roswell that rancher Mac Brazel discovered some unusual wreckage. He didn't think much of it, but when he heard stories of UFO sightings, he decided to report it to the authorities. The Roswell Army Air Base sent out its top intelligence officer. Major Jesse Marcel was attached to an elite unit, the 509th, the world's first nuclear bomber squadron.
What makes the Roswell story so different for me than other UFO stories is that I saw it. I saw it firsthand.
Jesse Marcel Jr. remembers the night his father woke him up to see something he claimed was out of this world.
When he came home that night and he woke myself and my mother up to come and look and see what he found, or at least what he retrieved from a crash site on this ranch out of Roswell. He said, I think it's part of a flying saucer. Now look very carefully at this, because you probably will never see this again. And he was right.
The crash debris was described as containing unusual materials. It was removed by the Air Force.
The military press release stated that through the cooperation of a rancher outside town, the Roswell Army Airfield had recovered the wreckage of a flying saucer. So it was headline news.
Stanton Friedman is a former nuclear physicist who has spent many years researching the Roswell incident.
Look at the evidence and you'll be convinced. There's no question in my mind that there's been a cover-up of the Roswell incident, an official government-sponsored cover-up, if you want to put it that way.
Within hours of releasing the UFO story, the military withdrew it, stating it was only a crashed weather balloon. Scientists have been using latex balloons since they were first developed in 1940. Weather balloons carry disposable instruments that take atmospheric measurements and relay the information back to Earth by radio.
Sorry, gentlemen, we made a mistake. It was not a flying saucer, just a radar reflector weather balloon combination. So within a 4-hour period, you went from Army recovers flying saucer to just a weather balloon.
To further compound the mystery, the Air Force flew the supposedly ordinary debris to Fort Worth, Texas for further study.
They really realized that they had something very strange here, very exotic. And that's when they wanted to kill the story as soon as possible.
Retired commercial pilot Robert Durant has been investigating Roswell for close to 20 years.
There's a big lie that's going on here and has been going on since 1947. The outgoing message traffic from Roswell Army Airfield was missing. And the records of the military police unit, which everybody says cleaned up the crash, and protected it, also missing. So that made me and a lot of other people suddenly get suspicious. They are covering this up, and they switched this stuff with the balloon and just hoped and prayed they could pull it off.
If the military was reporting the recovered debris was from a crashed radar reflector weather balloon, then the proof should come from the physical evidence itself.
It had physical properties that just didn't match anything that human beings were making at the time. I definitely believe there was a cover-up.
David Rudiak has been studying the Roswell incident for over 10 years. He believes rancher Mac Brazel wasn't mistaken with what he had found.
Brazel had done this interview saying, I found weather balloons on my property, but this wasn't like any of them, and it wasn't any weather observation device.
Actually, Mac Brazel was quite familiar with weather balloons because he'd seen them before. My dad went to radar school, so he knew what a radar target looked like.
Back in 1947, radar reflector targets were coated with foil that was available commercially. Believers maintain both Jesse Marcel and Mac Brazel would have recognized this and other common materials used in the weather balloon.
Okay, I went out to the local grocery store and got this chocolate bar, and this particular company was wrapping its chocolate bars in foil paper for about 30 years before Roswell. And this is what they made the radar targets from. I'm sure they would have been pretty familiar with the stuff.
We all came to the conclusion this was something that was very exotic, that this is probably not a human manufacture.
There was something else that Jesse Marcel Jr. remembers seeing on the debris his father showed him.
There was some writing along the inside edge of this. And I thought, what in the world is this? So I paid a little closer attention to that. I thought at first, well, hey, this is Egyptian hieroglyphics. But then again, no, this is not Egyptian hieroglyphics. This is more like mathematical or geometrical symbols.
It wasn't long before other stories emerged about what the Air Force may have found and retrieved from the debris site.
General Arthur Exon, he was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, said he knew about the debris coming in, and he also said he heard about bodies being recovered.
Flying saucers and spacemen are a part of our popular culture, and many believe they do exist. Others, more skeptical, aren't quick to agree.
The least likely explanation is that an extraterrestrial craft crashed on the planet Earth from some advanced civilization and left little cute humanoid bodies looking like an advanced futuristic form of us, just as our science fiction writers had described them.
Was there further evidence among the crash pointing toward a UFO and aliens? Find out when Best Evidence continues. (1947), Roswell, New Mexico. Strange-looking debris is found by rancher Mac Brazel.
Something crashed on the Brazel Ranch. It clearly doesn't describe to any reasonable person any kind of extraterrestrial craft. This has hoax written all over it.
Joe Nickel is one of the few professional paranormal investigators in the world.
Roswell is a vast and proliferating American myth.
Extraordinary claims do require extraordinary evidence.
Roswell skeptics claim there's no physical evidence supporting a UFO crash.
The scientific community really isn't going to be convinced that aliens have been visiting Earth without some cold, hard evidence. There aren't any known alien visitors.
Physicist Dave Thomas says that if aliens visited Earth, there would be indisputable physical proof. Photographic evidence of the crash debris appears to show only pieces of balloons and radar reflectors.
So far, the evidence of UFOs has been unextraordinary. It's been fuzzy photos and fuzzy memories. There are legends that have come out since then that the paper couldn't be burned or folded by any means. But if you look at the original witness descriptions, the rancher, Mac Brazel's daughter, Bessie Brazel, got to see the stuff. And she even described some rings that were part of the rigging for these complex balloons.
We want to look at the best evidence that we have, which means look at the original source, and we have that account by Mac Brazel. And based on Mac Brazel's statement, it doesn't appear to be any kind of extraterrestrial craft, unless, of course, extraterrestrials have invented tape and rubber and string and sticks and tinfoil.
What we think crashed at Roswell was part of a project called Project Mogul.
Mogul was a project using high-altitude listening devices suspended from weather balloons. It included a sonar system and radar tracking technology that could potentially detect nuclear tests being performed in the Soviet Union. Was this the debris found on the ranch? Kendrick Fraser believes it is.
I still think the idea of a crashed disk or a crash flying saucer is an extraordinary claim.
Many experimental launches involving weather balloons were sent out from Alamogordo, another military installation in New Mexico. Prevailing winds carried many of them toward the northeast, in the very direction of the Roswell base and the Brazel Ranch.
That is very likely what was found on the Brazel Ranch by Mac Brazel. This was the beginning of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was now our declared enemy, and they were developing nuclear weapons. We had nuclear weapons, but we didn't want them to, and we wanted to find out if they were exploding them in tests.
And so was born Project Mogul, a weather balloon-propelled experiment designed to measure sound waves in the upper atmosphere.
Well, certainly the Mogul project itself was highly classified, and the military did not want anybody reporting, oh, we're trying to get microphones to spy on Soviet atomic tests.
If the crash debris came from a secret military spy operation, how did the skeptics explain the strange hieroglyphic markings across some of the debris?
There was a toy company in Manhattan called Merrick Manufacturing, and on the side they manufactured these radar reflectors for the Army Signal Corps. The toy company evidently had some reinforcing tape that had these strange sort of hieroglyphic symbols on them. And I think when Marcel saw the strange alien markings and this unusual sort of metallic paper that was resistant to folding, I think that convinced Marcel that he'd found something that was not of this earth.
Many believers maintained that Roswell involved two cover-ups: replacing the spaceship debris and concealing the corpses of its occupants. Rumors have circulated for decades that there was more than just debris. There were alien bodies. According to Roswell believers, the first stop was the now famous Hangar 84.
This is where the action was. The bodies were brought here, they were kept here, probably with some dry ice.
If there are ghosts of Roswell, this abandoned building is their home.
Matter of fact, I would expect the bodies are still around somewhere. You want to run tests on them. Lots and lots of tests.
The alien body theory has its roots in a story told by local mortician Glenn Dennis.
There's a military protocol for handling bodies.
Years after the Roswell incident, Glenn Dennis came forward, claiming he got a call from the military base inquiring about small caskets and how to deal with bodies decomposed.